Well, that's one of the things that's so amazing about this project is we're going to connect this side to that side. We're going to provide the opportunity for people to be able to access transit. It also has a component of affordable housing. This is, there's going to be housing built here, 20% of which will be low-income housing, affordable housing. And I think we're taking on all these different pieces all at the same time, connecting neighborhoods, taking on climate change, getting more people out of their cars and into light rail, pedestrian access, bike access, and all of that, I think, building a community here that feels more connected.
And you touched on something up there that kind of ties into this about like, what are you doing to help the local community?
Yeah.
So problems that are facing our area now, the unhoused, rising rent prices, drug problem. What are you doing on the federal level to help, people in Seattle and in Shoreline with all these problems?
Well, on many levels, what we're trying to do is invest in smart solutions. So I was able to bring home $34 million in community-based project funding. That's the $4 million plus $10 million in federal dollars that are helping to fund this project. But also, we're doing all of the work around building more affordable housing. That is part of this project, obviously, but even through our appropriations money, through the infrastructure bill, we're trying to help address the lack of housing, the need to address climate and reduce emissions, and all of the human services that surround, a lot of our community needs right now. So through our appropriations funding, through our community-based project funding, through all of the bills that we have passed over the last 2 years, we're starting to make the kinds of investments that allow communities to grow and thrive, not just survive.
And you mentioned up there, you all were able to pass bills, but now you're in the minority. How do you plan to work these next 2 years with the other side that seems hell-bent on not allowing anything to pass?
Well, one of the great things, I call it the timeline of good things. We're going to unroll the timeline of good things because we passed so much legislation in the last 2 years. A lot of it is only going to start being seen on the ground over the next 2 years. Infrastructure projects are going to get rolled out. More funding around tax credits for people to get electric vehicles or to even access credits so that they can get appliances in their homes. All of these things are going to roll out. The cap on insulin, $35 cap on insulin for seniors, that just started. So part of our job over the next 2 years is to make sure that the implementation of these bills is showing up on the ground and that we're celebrating it. In terms of working with the other side, look, we'll try to get the things done that we can get done, but I do find it interesting that a lot of the people that never voted for these bills are now claiming money for the projects and showing up at the ribbon cutting. So I would say, listen, it's all about serving the people, but at the end of the day, everyone in this country should know it's Democrats who delivered. We will continue to do that. We'll try to find any places that Republicans will work with us, but hopefully in 2 years, we're going to get the rest of the president's agenda done when we take back the House and expand the Senate.
And that's hard to do. I'll tell you, I worked in Indianapolis for 3 years prior to this, and there's been a lot of gerrymandering that's happened that have made truly districts Republican and Republican only for many years to come. So how do you see your fellow Democrats in other states who are trying to run in these districts faring well and being able to take back the House?
Well, it's a huge problem that you're identifying, and we have been trying to make sure we're challenging some of those gerrymandered districts in courts. That's one thing that we've been spending a lot of time on. Eric Holder, our former Attorney General under Barack Obama, has really taken that mantle on. Also, we know that we need to strengthen voting rights. We passed the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We passed the For the People Act to get money out of politics. So it's really your vote that counts, not all the money that comes into elections. We know it's going to be tough. But I also fundamentally believe that what we have done in the last 2 years under Democratic control, a Democratic president, Democratic Senate, and a Democratic House, with the tiniest of margins, is nothing short of remarkable. If you look at where we are today, we have created 12 million new jobs in just 2 years. We're making things in America again. We have brought down unemployment to the lowest level in over half a century, and we've made the biggest investment into climate change that we could have ever imagined. That's just a start. I don't even have enough time to go through all the things that we've done, but I hope that it's part of the reason it's really important to let the American people know what we've done and have them be able to feel it, even as times are very tough for people across the country.
And a few more questions about other important national stories. Michigan State University, a mass shooting there just a few days ago. Then right after El Paso, while the Buffalo shooter was being sentenced. You know, this isn't normal, even though it has become the normal in America. And whether you call it gun control or gun reform, how do you see our country moving forward to the point to where there's not like, I don't wake up one morning and there's a mass shooting at UW that I have to go cover and that you have to come back here for and, you know, give thoughts and prayers, but then like there's no action. So how do we fix this?
This is one of the things that keeps me up at night, every night. You know, we are completely out of the norm of any other country that is as advanced as we are, and yet we have these kinds of mass shootings. We have passed the assault weapons ban in the House of Representatives. We have passed a law for sensible background checks. We passed any number of gun reforms, sensible gun reforms that are supported by both Republicans, Democrats, and independents. But Republicans have continued to block most of it. Now, we were able to do, in a bipartisan way, some important reforms in the last session. That's the first time in decades that we've been able to do anything. But I think these continued mass shootings show us again that we should be able to all agree that nobody needs assault weapons out on the streets. That was not what the founding framers intended in our Constitution. We should ban those assault weapons. We should pass sensible background checks. And we should take on the NRA, which is just pouring money into stopping any sensible reforms and frankly contributing to the deaths of people across this country, including our school children who go to school and have to do drills about how they hide from mass shooters.
That's very hard to stomach, truly. Couple more questions. The Chinese spy balloon and then all these unidentified objects.
Yeah.
How do we maintain like a sovereign country whenever we kind of like we know what they are, but we don't know what they are? Like, and it's kind of like the information. Like, do we tell the public everything?
Right.
What's your stance on all of that?
Well, you know, I think I do have some concerns about why we didn't even hear about these balloons during the last administration. Did we not have the technology to detect them? Or was that kept from us by the national security community and the former president? But I do think that what the Biden administration is doing right now is important, which is gathering information. You have to shoot down these balloons in order to find out what exactly is what is the equipment that is being carried. Not all the balloons are not all the objects are the same. One was we called it the balloon, but it's really a drone. We saw some other objects that were much smaller. Are they all from the same place? What do they have in common? So I would say to people that it's important to be aware of this, to continue to look for transparency from the administration, but also not to jump to any conclusions because we don't know what these objects are collecting. We don't know what their capability is. We do need the intel community to find out that information and then share it with us.
Last question, should President Biden run again?
I do believe the president should run again. He has had a remarkable legacy in just 4 years, and I think that he has shown us that he is deeply committed to delivering for the people. He has the ability to fundamentally communicate with working people across this country. He has a compassion that I think is really quite unique for a politician at his level. And as you may know, he wasn't my choice in the presidential election, but I have worked extremely closely with him, and I really believe he's been the most effective and progressive president that I have seen in my decade. So my vote is run again, President Biden. We're going to support you.
What do you say to people who say he's too old?
I say look at what he's done. I mean, he's had a record of success, and I believe that he has shown us that he has incredible energy, that he has the health and the ability to do this. And do I believe that we need a younger generation of people in all of these offices? Absolutely. But let's not take away from him the success that he's had And I think if anybody else had had that success, we would be saying run again. And I don't think I think it's not fair to say that he shouldn't run just because he happens to be a certain age.
Well, I could talk to you forever. I have so many questions. Nikki Haley running, a fellow Indian person of color. What do you have any comment about her running or
well,
putting,
look, I think
in?
I think that Nikki Haley and I have very, very different political views. I think it's important that there is diversity in all of our elections. I think that I congratulate her on having a very successful career in the Republican Party. But at the end of the day, this is going to come down to who's going to protect Social Security and Medicare, who's going to make sure that we are actually delivering for people, who's going to call out attempts to destroy our democracy. Let's not forget that for a long time, Nikki Haley did not say anything when Donald Trump was the president of the United States. Yes, she did step back at some point, but I think it's important to recognize that a lot of these Republicans were part and parcel of emboldening the former president, who ended up being causing an insurrection, fueling an insurrection. And I think that is something that the country should not forget.
And you mentioned Medicare and Social Security. If you want to talk about that, because during the State of the Union, your colleague Marjorie Taylor Greene called the president a liar whenever he said Republicans want to cut those programs. But we know Senator Scott, I believe, it's in his plan, or Perry, right?
Scott.
Yeah. It's in his plan. So to those senior citizens who may be watching, or not even people who are 65. What do you say to them about the Democratic Party stance and your stance on protecting those programs?
Well, first of all, I thought it was outrageous that the president was treated with the disrespect that he was treated at the State of the Union. But on the fundamental issue, I think Republicans may want to try and run away from, the idea that they're trying to cut Social Security and Medicare. It is incredibly unpopular. It is the wrong thing to do. But they can't run away from it because they keep saying the quiet part aloud. It isn't just Rick Scott that has a plan to cut Social Security and Medicare. It's also the Republican Study Committee that put out their recommendations to cut Social Security and Medicare, continued to do that. And I think if you look at the history of Republicans, that is what they have been trying to do. Vice President Mike Pence also said something similar. So let's just be clear that if you want to reform the programs and raise the age of eligibility or cut the benefits, that is cutting Social Security and Medicare. It is a direct contrast with what Democrats want to do, which is to expand Social Security and Medicare. We would like to make sure that every American understands that Social Security is not an entitlement. It is an earned benefit. You put money into Social Security because you work, it comes out of your taxes, you pay for it, and the idea is it will take care of you when you're older and when you retire. And that is a compact between the government and individuals, and we are intending to keep that compact and to expand the benefits.
One last question. Just one more. Supreme Court. We talked about gerrymandering and a few other things, and it kind of comes down to the Supreme Court, SCOTUS. There's a 6-3 emboldened majority that got rid of Roe v. Wade, and they're taking on other things that could erode some of the stuff that you support. What do we do? Do we ask Supreme Court justices to step down? Do we expand the court?
Well, I have signed on to a bill that would expand the Supreme Court. I think that the Supreme Court, this has been done before. This is not something that's never been done. The Supreme Court has been expanded before. And I think the Supreme Court has to understand that when trust in the Supreme Court is at the lowest level ever, they are doing something very, very destructive to our democracy. So I think we should expand the Supreme Court. I also think, and I have a bill with Senator Warren around Supreme Court ethics. We need to have a set of ethics and standards for the Supreme Court, and that should include transparency, accountability. They should be recusing themselves. We have Supreme Court justices one Supreme Court justice whose wife was involved in the insurrection, apparently, and that Supreme Court justice voted, the only one to vote in a particular way to support insurrectionists. So this is a big problem, and we're going to continue to work on that.